Hi, thanks for watching. Okay, in this video, what I want to do is keep going with the idea of what I think could be the best approach to recover from personality disorders. Okay, like I said in the other video, I think we have to be very realistic. Okay, for I think maybe the most severe, the most profound personality disorders, I think that's when the personality disorder is so extreme that it really is the equivalent to having a disability. Okay, and it might be like probably should be considered very similar to having severe autism because the very structures of perception. We say the personality, but what's really happening is the very foundations of our ability to perceive the world and to evaluate reality are so distorted that I think really it should be considered just as disabling as psychosis. It's just a different kind of psychosis, I think. This is something where I disagree with psychology. I think the fact that you classify something as a personality disorder is sort of like assume that it's less severe than psychosis or schizophrenia. I think in the most severe forms, I think personality disorders are disabling and really they're just as unreal. They create just as much unreality as a psychosis. The problem is that they don't have the same presentation. It's not hallucinations. It's not voices. It's not derangement. In the same category. But the problem with personality disorders is that your ability to evaluate reality and to assess and to have judgment are so impaired by what I would call the lack of sobriety. Okay, so you can have such an impairment of sobriety that it could be almost unrecoverable. You know, so I do think that we have to really, first of all, understand that the most serious personality disorders are they really, really, as far as I'm concerned, they are disabilities, and this is to me it should be on the same level as psychosis, but it's a different kind of unreality, but it's still unreality. And so I do think that we need to, respect the most severe cases, but, for the moderate and mild cases, and then the subclinical spectrum issues that we all have as, let's say, just normal people in the world. Um, I think that, again, I was talking about the similarity to addictions. Okay, now I'm not going to say that having a personality disorder is an addiction. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's the exact same thing. I'm saying it's similar. It's very, very similar. And just as with addiction, you know the the ideal path is towards sobriety. Okay, I think we need to look at sobriety as often the missing element when we are very symptomatic in the personality disorder. Okay, basically, let's go to narcissistic. Okay, this is what I'm trying to focus on with this channel. Okay, so a lot of people would say, well, narcissism is basically arrogance, it's looking down on people, making people feel bad, having envy, creating envy, um, being kind of elitist, superior. Okay, well, yeah, that is the presentation of narcissism. I have no problem with that. But I think what is narcissism, okay, and I think, as far as I'm concerned, it is, a kind of mental immaturity, however it comes about, okay, and also I think it is a kind of an attention deficit in the sense that as we're weighing the factors of the panorama of our experience, okay, the different elements, okay, we get so caught up in certain spells. We get kind of enraptured by certain kind of fixating on certain aspects of reality that we don't have enough attention to consider the rest of reality. Okay, so in other words, we have a weakness, let's say, in narcissism for things that are very superior, that are very premier, that are very vanguard, that are very high class, whatever. But we get so fixated on that we everything else kind of evaporates. Okay, that to me is an attention deficit. Okay, because we had more full attention. Okay, then you could have just a little bit of an appreciation for whatever elite bullshit, but then you could still have the remaining attention and still see what else is in the panorama. So in the end, it is to me either a developmental or maturity issue, but in the end, what it really is a lack of attention and getting too caught up in certain, let's say favorite areas, of the mind. And it's sort of like you're enraptured and you're taken, in the spell of these kind of favorite places, and everything else just kind of evaporates. That to me is a lack of attention. But what it also is, it is a lack of sobriety. Okay, because again, one way to look at a narcissistic person is they live practically always in a spell. They live practically always enraptured by their fantasy ideals, by the things in the world that sort of capture their idea of the ideal, whatever their kind of their favorite things. Like, if I have a weakness, imagine it's analogous to somebody who has a weakness for good looking girls, or good looking cars, nice cars, oh wow, that car, it's like it becomes an obsession. Well, in the narcissism, I think these are people who have a weakness for what is the highest class, what is the premier, the vanguard, the top dog, the upper class in whatever area, And so it's kind of like compare that to somebody who's just a fanatic for cars, like, really nice cars or good looking girls or maybe food, the best food, whatever. It just becomes such a focus, and it sort of kind of takes the person out of normal sobriety. You know what I mean? It's sort of like you're not down to earth. You know what I mean? And so when you look at it that way, there is, I think, a basic impairment in the basic attention that's available. We don't have full panorama. We just don't. We get caught too much into whatever the spell is that we get captured by. But really, what's really happening is that the person with narcissism is really experiencing a lack of sobriety. Okay, because if we define sobriety as having your feet on the ground and seeing everything around you clearly and not getting pulled by one shiny thing, and really, they say in the vernacular, they talk about the shiny object. Well, the narcissism is basically being caught in the shiny object of all these kind of high class, superior, whatever bullshit, So basically, in the end, what I see in narcissism is a lack of sobriety. Okay, that's just how I see it. And I think BPD is very similar. BPD maybe is not so focused on the high class, but it is focused on the favorite and the favorite and the favorite, and also the status. The BPD is concerned always about, even to the point of fantasy, about what is my status, not in the narcissistic way of like, am I high class, am I at the top? But the BPD is concerned with the status of belonging and having connection. Okay. The narcissist is also concerned about the status of belonging and having connection, but through the idea of being at the top, being the admirable. Okay. But either way, these are status preoccupations. And so we could say that maybe they arise from an excessive fixation on status. And you could argue that maybe it arises from a deep insecurity as to status. Okay. Not just insecurity in general. Okay. I think a lot of people, they're too broad in their brushstroke. I think that they say, oh, just insecure. No, it's specifically an insecurity about my status with others and in the world. Okay, so it's status preoccupation, such a fixation that it takes over the whole attention. And who knows? I mean, bottom line, you could talk about why it's a kind of immaturity, it's kind of lack of attention, but the end effect is that it robs us of sobriety. Okay, we don't have our feet on the ground. We're not able, because of the shiny object and that preoccupation, we're not able to have full panorama, cool mind, seeing everything, taking everything into account, other people, what's going around outside of our personal interest. It just, we're robbed of that sobriety, So with that as a platform, if I were to try to make the connection, let's say an analogy between what the addicts have in their peer groups, their 12-step, their peer groups, their sponsor model. Okay, what would the analogy look like for personality disorders? And I would think that just like, say, in the Alcoholics Anonymous, the basic thing is I don't want to be drinking. You know, what they're really saying is I want my sobriety. Okay, the alcohol took away my sobriety. I want my sobriety, and that's what's going to save me. Okay, the same thing would be for the personality disorder. You'd have to come to that realization, just like with the addictions. You got to come to the realization that I don't have sobriety and I need sobriety to function. Okay, I'm not going to go so far as to say, "Oh, I'll be dead if I don't have it." You don't have to say that. You just have to say, "My life could be really messed up, and I know it if I don't have that sobriety, and it's missing." Or I should have more of it. You know. So basically, if I were to try to draw the parallel, to try to make the analogy, just like the alcoholic will say, well, by the grace of God or through the higher power, I will not be drinking. I will not have the thing that takes away my sobriety. I think, taking God out of it, because there's no need for that. But maybe as the higher power, the personality disordered person could say, the higher power for me would be sobriety itself. Okay, having sobriety is bigger than me. Okay, sobriety is a very powerful thing, and it's something that I don't have. you know and so it's bigger than me, it's beyond me. I am powerless that I can't have that sobriety. And so basically, all you could take the higher power and collapse it into the basic element, which is we take sobriety seriously. We may not always have it, but we take it seriously, and we're trying to deal with not having it, but we take it very seriously. And we believe, this is where the faith comes in. If there's one item of faith, it would be something like, we believe that sobriety could really help us, however we get to it. And then I think, if you were to try to make the analogy to, like, say, the 12-step meetings and the conversations with the sponsor and the personal inventories, it would be basically all around, how do I develop strategies? How do I modify my lifestyle and do what I need to do discipline wise to try to at least have more sobriety? And when I'm really low on sobriety, how to recover at least a reasonable amount of sobriety, and taking it seriously. If there's one thing, just like, the Alcoholics Anonymous, what unites them, what brings them back, is they don't want to be drinking anymore. They don't want to have that thing that takes away. Same thing with the narcissist or the borderline. I want to try to seek ways that we can sort of manage the shiny objects, the big preoccupations, and despite our weakness, to do what we have to do, experimenting, working with other people, just caring about it, that we can at least seek more sobriety in our lives and develop strategies so that when we are in a hot situation where we kind of lose our sobriety. Imagine the Chad Daybell. He lost his sobriety as soon as he met Lori Vallow, right? How do you recover when you're slipping? You know what I mean? Very important. Maybe it's checking in. Maybe it's having just religiously, having every day a quiet time where you decompress, you get out of the shiny stuff, and you have 1 hour. You don't have to call it meditation. You could just call it's decompression. Just 1 hour out of my day where I can just decompress and maybe talk to somebody who has the same interest, who has the same concern. But the fact that there could be like a society of people who are like a peer group, who all have the same struggle, or at least spectrum issues, and who really care about sobriety and really are dedicated to, having conversations around it and developing ways to find more of it, or to develop more of it in our lives. So that's basically the kind of the analog to what I would see, to what is already established, I think, in the addiction recovery peer groups and the sponsorship models. Just this would be a way to kind of adapt it to the personality disorder. That really the main thing that we're missing often is just sobriety. In our case, we get high on the magic of life, not necessarily on substances, but the model is the same. So thank you.